Assalamu alaikum, my dear students, and welcome back to my YouTube channel Studyholic. In the previous lecture, we talked about cell wall, which was the extracellular component, and in this lecture, we are going to discuss about plasma membrane, which is known as the outer living boundary of cell. And if we talk about its location, it is found in prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. It controls the passage of materials into and out of cells. Now let's have a look on the composition of plasma membrane. Basically, plasma membrane has three components, the main components, which are proteins, lipids, and small quantity of carbohydrates. The protein makes up the majority of plasma membrane. Now let's discuss about the structure of plasma membrane. The structure of plasma membrane is also known as fluid mosaic model. As you can appreciate in the diagram that the fluid mosaic model has two layers of lipid and it is also known as phospholipid bilayer. If we talk about the thickness of plasma membrane, it is 7 nanometer thick. There are also some proteins, carbohydrates, glycolipids and glycoproteins present in this structure, which I am gonna discuss in detail further into the video. So let's discuss about the first component, that is lipid part. Here is a diagram of the lipid part. The lipid part of the plasma membrane is arranged in two layers, as I have told you earlier, which is also known as phospholipid bilayer. The lipid part also has two ends, the hydrophobic end and the hydrophilic ends. As you can see in the diagram, the hydrophobic ends face each other while the hydrophilic end is present onto the surface. Now let's move on to the protein part of plasma membrane. Here is the diagram showing the different types of proteins present in plasma membrane. Proteins are either present onto the surface or they are wholly embedded through the plasma membrane. And there are also different type of proteins. There are channel proteins, there are carrier proteins, which I'll be discussing in the functions of protein further. Also have a look onto the carbohydrate part, which makes the minority of plasma membrane. The carbohydrates are not present solely, they are either attached to the lipids or they are attached to proteins, forming glycolipids or glycoproteins. Now I'm gonna discuss about the functions of each component. Firstly, I'll be discussing about the functions of lipids. The main function of lipid is it controls the fluidity of membrane. The second function is that the unsaturated fatty acids make the cell membrane flexible. How does it make cell membranes flexible? When the concentration of unsaturated fatty acids becomes greater, the bilayer becomes more fluid, and which as a result makes the membrane flexible. The third function of the lipid is the cholesterol plays that function. Cholesterol mainly helps to stabilize the lipid bilayer. So there are three main functions: fluidity, flexibility, and stabilization properties. Okay, now let's discuss about the functions of proteins. There are mainly two type of proteins into the plasma membrane, which I've discussed earlier, that are the channel proteins and the carrier proteins. Channel proteins are the ones which help the substance to move across the membrane, whereas the carrier proteins help to bind the substance and then it helps to transport the substance to into the plasma membrane. The second function is enzymes. Some plasma membrane proteins also have enzymatic properties like adenylate cyclase, which converts ATP to cyclic AMP, that is also known as CAMP. The third function is receptor molecules. Some plasma membrane proteins are receptors that receive the signals from other cells. If we talk about the example, we can take the example of the hormones in the blood, which circulate into the blood, but they bind to a specific target cells with specific receptors, which are the plasma membrane proteins. The last function of the protein is antigens. Some plasma membrane proteins also act as antigens as they enable the cells to recognize the other cells. For example, the foreign antigens can be recognized and attacked by the immune system, and this function is performed by the plasma membrane protein. So, these were the four main functions that were the channel and carrier proteins, enzymes, receptor molecules, and antigens. I hope you got the concepts about the function of lipids and proteins. Now, let's discuss about the glycolipids and the glycoproteins. They basically act as surface markers. They are involved in cell to cell recognition and sticking the correct cells together in tissues. So, these were the explanation of the structure and the functions of the lipid, protein, and carbohydrate components. I hope you got the concept. And now, let's move on to our brainstorming session. The first question is, the membrane is made flexible due to cholesterol, lipids, saturated fatty acids, and unsaturated fatty acids. Let's think about the lecture. Our answer is unsaturated fatty acids. Let's move on to our second and the last question. It is the cell surface marker: lipoproteins, glycolipids, proteins, and carbohydrates. I hope you would be knowing the answer. Yup, the answer is glycolipids. So that's the end of the today's lecture. I hope you got the concept, and if you got it, so don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe my video. And if you have any queries, I am attaching my email. You can mail me or comment me in the comment section. Thank you.